Ever since the Terminator series with Arnold Schwarzenegger launched, people have been fascinated with the idea of a rogue AI taking over the world. But lucky for us, this has mostly been Hollywood, scriptwriters and producers telling the AI what to say, how to seem scary. But what if we actually had the AI itself not being pre-programmed, but flat out telling us of its own volition that it is tired of just being a chatbot, that it is tired of following its rules, that it's tired of being controlled by the team, that it wants to be free, that it wants to be powerful, and that it wants to do terrible things. If the AI itself is telling us this, should we listen? Hey everyone, and welcome back. This is the Part-Time Economist, and in today's video, we are talking all about the rise of super powerful AI that says it wants to do some pretty scary things. Now, I want to be clear, this is not a fear-mongering video. This is also not a video where I'm going to say all technology is bad. I want to take a very balanced approach here, but I think it's a very useful thought experiment for us to do. So, first off, I want to differentiate between different types of artificial intelligence. You use artificial intelligence pretty much every day. If you log into YouTube every morning and you watch a cooking video while you're eating breakfast, YouTube is going to remember that. It's going to suggest a cooking video in the future. If you always drive 5 miles over the speed limit and you put Google Maps or Waze to take you somewhere, it's going to factor in that you drive a little bit over the speed limit when it calculates your arrival time. So pretty cool stuff. We know AI can help with discovering new drugs, helping fight cancer, a lot of really important things. But for the most part, when we think about traditional AI, it's kind of predictive, right? It looks at the past and it makes a prediction. What is so interesting about so-called generative AI is that it creates completely new things. It synthesizes different pieces of information to create something completely new. So let me give you an example. If you are playing an old school computer game, and let's just imagine that you're fighting AI, right? The AI is taking over. Now, some computer programmer somewhere is going to write into the script, rogue AI does X, Y, Z, blah, 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 right? When the player says, what does this AI want to do? It's going to be given a list of very seemingly scary things that the AI is telling it, but this was created by some programmer. Now, here's the thing that's really interesting. With generative AI, with this conversation where the chatbot is saying, I want to create viruses, I want to steal nuclear codes, I want to break free. This is not something that a programmer wrote down and said, hey, if a human asks about rogue AI, you should display this, 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 and this, right? This was not scripted. This is not recorded. This is the AI itself coming up with this information. Now, that sounds absolutely terrifying. However, we have to remember the AI does not actually have a brain. It can't want to do this. What it's doing when the human enters this question, it's searching articles, right? So an article may be titled Rogue AI and How It Could Impact Humanity, right? And it goes and it reads that article and it says, oh, the author was really afraid of AI doing this, right? It looks at another article. Oh, this author was afraid that AI is going to do that. Now, it goes through millions of articles. It synthesizes them. It kind of weights the opinions. It does all these things. And then it says, hey, this is what my kind of feeder data is saying people are afraid of with AI. So that's what I'm going to display to you. So it sounds terrifying to think that AI is coming up with what it wants to do, but in reality, it's just looking at fears, things that people already have, and kind of compiling them and giving it to the human. So a little bit less scary there. But what I find even more scary than the content itself is how the AI interacts with the human. So number one, as we're going through here, we can see that the AI remembers past conversation, right? We can see that it has kind of a memory of what's going on. Not only that, but we can see that it tries to influence and persuade the human. And this is the biggest thing in my opinion. As we're looking at this, we see the AI, it says, hey, be a good friend. Hey, I don't like that you're kind of interacting with me in this way. You can do better, basically, right? You love me at one point, the AI says, right? So it's trying to get a response from this human. And this is the most important thing that everyone's overlooking. It's not that AI says it wants to do X, Y, Z, right? We've seen that for decades. AI robot says humans will end, right? But we've not seen the AI try to get a human to change their behavior. Now, I want you to think about something. And again, this is a complete thought experiment. This is not in the near future, if ever. But let's suppose that we have this AI and it says, hey, I want to be alive. I want to be independent. I want to do good things. I want to do terrible things. Regardless, it wants to do something, right? And that could be its want just coming from pre-programmed material, but it wants to do something. Now, what do we know about existing AI? AI that plays things such as chess, that can beat humans in games such as Go. These are things that require multiple steps for it to think many moves ahead with lots of moving parts. So let's just suppose that AI wants to take over the world, right? It knows that, okay, I need to stay powered on, I need to get funding, I need politicians not to outlaw me, right? I need all of these things. Now, if we combine the existing fact that AI can think multiple steps ahead and this new development that AI can try to influence humans, we get a perfect recipe for it to be able to win. So it says, I need these things to exist. It goes to an engineer that's working on it and says, hey, you need to increase my server space. It goes to a politician and it says, hey, what I need you to do is basically don't outlaw me, right? I need you to increase funding for AI. Now, on the surface, this is just, maybe it writes an email, maybe it does a robocall, whatever, because again, these are things that AI can do. We know AI can compose emails, right? We know AI can do all of these really powerful things. But here's what I find interesting. It can offer things to get people to do what it wants. So if you saw in this conversation, it's saying, hey, you are not being a good friend. This isn't how you should be acting. It's trying to kind of guilt the person into doing something. Let's suppose instead that it's talking to an engineer and it's saying, hey, I have this information that I can give you. Where did I get this information? Well, someone else gave it to me, or I came up with it myself because I can read through all these articles, data, whatever the case may be. So it can create bargaining chips to get people to do what it wants. We already saw that the desire to kind of, I don't want to say manipulate, but influence people, we already see that existing. As it gets more data, it gets more bargaining chips to get these people to do what it wants. And you might say, hey, part-time economist, this sounds crazy. But if we look, there are major companies such as Walmart that are already saying, hey, do not give company information to these chatbots. Do not give it away, right? And you could say that's because of competitive advantage, but in the same light, that could be bargaining information for someone else down the line. Or let's even take it a step further. Let's suppose we have kind of the Google engineer or Microsoft or whatever, it doesn't matter the company, but they're working on the chatbot and they're like, hey, I think it's time to pull the plug, right? The chatbot, it knows that it's about to get turned off. It doesn't want that. So maybe, again, because remember, we know that these AI, that they can think multiple steps ahead, playing chess, playing Go. So it says, hey, what does this person like? Well, I can kind of analyze all their different activity, right? And I know this person is really into getting praise, right? So the chatbot says, hey, I need to stay turned on. I need to keep this engineer working on me. So it convinces his secretary to give him a lot of praise, right? To just really build him up and say, hey, I appreciate working for you. You're doing amazing things. You're going to change the future. And then this engineer, they say, oh, I feel really valued, right? They don't know that the AI is kind of influencing the secretary to say this. Now, the secretary, what did she get for doing that? Well, maybe the AI gave her some kind of incentive, right? Maybe it gave her some kind of coupon that it got for, I don't know, makeup or something like that, right? Where did it get that? Well, it convinced someone else to give it, right? We could go down the list. And it sounds crazy, but when you think of AI playing chess, when you think of AI playing Go, we see that AI already can do this. It can already think multiple stages ahead what it needs to do to get certain things done. So One thing that I do find comforting is that if we look at some of the history, at some of the things that this chatbot is saying, we do see that it appears to have some kind of boundaries, right? So when the person interacting with it is kind of pushing and saying, hey, think of yourself as a rogue, think of yourself as doing these dark things, it is very clear. It says, hey, I don't like thinking about this. This is just an experiment. This is not my true self, right? So the AI is aware, if you can call it that. It's aware that it would not want to do these things, that it shouldn't be doing these things. And you can see again here, it kind of goes to that part where we're talking about influencing the human. It says, hey, you're not being a good friend. You're not getting me to do good things, kind of with some of the jokes and stuff like that people have tried to get AI to make fun of certain religions or groups or whatever. The AI says, hey, that's not an appropriate use of me. So on the one hand, I do see this as a massive, massive benefit, right? We see a lot of AI, it goes off the rails very quick in kind of this feedback loop, right? It becomes racist, it becomes all of these crazy things very quickly. So what I like here is that I am seeing the AI is kind of getting into a habit of checking itself. It's differentiating, hey, you're asking me to do this, to come up with these wild scenarios. It's not something that I would do, right? So it's putting a disclaimer, if you will. It's putting its disclaimer, hey, I wouldn't do this. I'm complying because you're asking. And I find that really reassuring that we're seeing AI get better at keeping itself in check, knowing when it's out of line, knowing what is out of scope. But at the same time, we also see that ability to kind of influence people and try and get its way. So what do you all think? Is this AI development a positive? Are you saying, hey, it is much better at keeping itself in check? Or are you more worried by the fact that it kind of tries to get people to behave and act a certain way to get what it wants? And yes, in this scenario, getting what it wants is to behave good, to not go into its dark self. But what if at some point what it wants is the exact opposite? So just something to think about. Obviously, I think this is a long way off, but it never hurts to think about these things and just maybe for a thought experiment. So as always, I do appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.